all women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts: the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus Delendis 8. Walking on Water, Clear, Ordered Thinking, written by Conrad Riker. Available now. Links in description. Walking on Water. A field guide for men who still notice reality. The psychosis of the bauble, debunking decorative violence and the female solipsistic war on the male sanctuary. I once watched a feminist academic declare war on Christmas ornaments with the same trembling fury that Martin Luther must have felt nailing his theses to the Wittenberg door. Except Luther had the courage of his convictions. Whereas this particular revolutionary wanted the church doors nailed shut and the congregation paying rent, Dr.
Winona feminist, Marxist, PhD. Her actual credential, apparently, though one suspects it was printed on the same press as the Scum Manifesto, has diagnosed your living room as a crime scene. That wreath on your door?
Spatial dominance, those dumbbells in the corner. Toxic masculinity, your wife's face roller, submission to the male gaze. The technical term for this kind of reasoning, derived from the Latin bullshitus, is projection so transparent it could be used as microscope slides. What we are witnessing is semantic parasitism in its terminal stage.
The word violence descends from the Latin violentia, meaning vehement physical force. Yet Winona has expanded it to encompass decorative choices that fail her ideological purity test.
This is not carelessness with language, it is a deliberate epistemic attack. When violence means both punching someone in the face and hanging stockings by the chimney with care, the word loses all discriminative power.
And actual violence becomes unspeakable because the category has been rendered meaningless. This is the same rhetorical sorcery that transformed racism from belief in racial superiority to any outcome Winona dislikes.
The pattern is always the same. Staya is, claim moral authority. Feeling, declare distress. Meaning, reframe distress as harm. Duty, demand your compliance. Sanction, shame you into submission. Immunity, dismiss your counter-argument as proof of your bias. The loop self-seals like a submarine hatch. And just like a submarine, the whole apparatus sinks if anyone opens a window.
Here is what Winona cannot tolerate. Your home is not her jurisdiction.
The Western legal tradition, stretching from Roman dominium through the English castle doctrine to the Fourth Amendment, recognizes the private dwelling as the fundamental unit of subsidiarity, authority residing at the most local competent level. Your living room is not the res publica. It is the last redoubt of ordered liberty, the space where a man may exercise judgment without submitting it to committee review.
Winona calls this spatial dominance. Aristotle called it oikonomia, household management, the foundational training ground for virtue and self-governance.
The man who hangs a wreath is not staking a claim against the collective. He is participating in a civilizational inheritance that predates Marxism by 3,000 years and will outlast it by 3,000 more.
The home gym drives Winona particularly mad because it represents everything her ideology cannot control. Somatic excellence, freely chosen.
The Greeks understood that mens sana in corpore sano, a sound mind in a sound body, was the foundation of citizenship. The man who trains in his garage prepares himself to carry burdens for others, to protect his household, to stand ready when crisis demands strength.
Winona sees only performative dominance because she cannot conceive of strength as sacrificial gift.
This is gamma bias crystallized. Male suffering is invisible. Male preparation is threatening. Male excellence is oppression. Meanwhile, $60,000 in student debt for a degree in decorative violence studies represents critical consciousness. The face roller, incidentally, is not submission to the patriarchy. It is a woman's voluntary participation in pulchritudo, beauty recognized by every civilization as one of the three transcendental universals alongside truth and goodness.
That Winona finds this oppressive tells us nothing about face rollers and everything about her own impoverished relationship to the erotic dimension of human existence. What Winona demands is not justice but capitulation.
Your comfort is a luxury the oppressed cannot afford. Translation: your achievements must be dismantled, your traditions must be abolished, your private space must be colonized by my infinite grievances. And you must thank me for the privilege. This is not progress, it is totalitarianism wearing therapeutic language like a skin suit.
The uncomfortable truth is that Winona and her ideological kin have presided over the collapse of the family, the destruction of civil society,
and the spiritual impoverishment of two generations, and rather than accept responsibility, they demand more authority, more surrender, more of your submission to their endless needs. The divorce courts are full of men who believe the lie that self-abnegation would earn them love. The cemeteries are full of men who took the empathy gap seriously and discovered, too late, that nobody was coming.
The abortion clinics are full of reproductive rights that somehow became exclusively female rights, while men's children are disposed of without their consent. And now, Winona wants your Christmas decorations. Buncombe article by a feminist PhD. The Tyranny of the Trinket, Dismantling the Patriarchal Aesthetics of the Holiday Home by Dr. Winona, feminist Marxist PhD. As the seasonal cycle resets, many of us feel a familiar dread.
It isn't just the commercial frenzy, it is the suffocating weight of decorative violence. This is the unseen trauma inflicted when private spaces are weaponized to reinforce heteronormative capitalist narratives without the consent of the collective. We must stop viewing our homes as sanctuaries of personal expression and start seeing them for what they are. Political battlegrounds where the war for equity is lost in 1,000 tiny, seemingly innocent choices. Consider the seasonal decor that currently clutters your living room. To the untrained eye, it is festive. To the critical consciousness, it is a shrine to exclusion. Every bauble is a manifestation of comfort colonialism, the theft of shared mental peace for the sake of individual nostalgia. When a patriarchal figure imposes a specific cultural aesthetic, be it a tree or a wreath, upon a shared space, they are engaging in an act of spatial dominance. It creates a hierarchy where one tradition is center stage, rendering all others invisible. This isn't about celebration, it is about staking a claim. The impact of this visual noise is profound, triggering feelings of alienation in those who do not subscribe to these rituals. Your holiday spirit is actually a microaggression against the diverse reality of the modern world. This aggression extends into the physical body through the cult of workouts at home. We are told this is about health, but we must look deeper. The home gym is a temple of toxic masculinity. It represents the privatization of wellness, accessible only to those with the surplus capital and space to hoard it. More insidiously, it reinforces the idea that the body is a machine to be tamed and perfected, rather than a site of emotional experience. When we prioritize gains and performance, we are centering the patriarchal value of productivity over the communal duty of care. The sight of weights in a common area is not neutral. It is a declaration that male physical dominance takes precedence over the safety and calm of the domestic sphere. It forces those nearby to witness the labor of aggression, turning a shared environment into a stage for performative strength. Perhaps the most subtle agent of this oppression is the face roller. This trendy tool is marketed as self-care, but it is merely a glossy veneer on the rot of the male gaze. By engaging in these rituals, we internalize the oppressive idea that our value is tied to our geometry. The act of rolling one's face is not empowerment. It is a submission to the demand that we remain aesthetically palatable to the power structures that seek to consume us. It centers the visual over the visceral, the surface over the soul. Every stroke of the roller is a silent agreement with the patriarchy. I will conform. We must embrace a new morality of impact. If your comfort requires the exclusion of others, if your self-care reinforces harmful hierarchies, then it is not care at all. It is complicity. We must be brave enough to dismantle our own sanctuaries. We must strip the walls, silence the weights, and shatter the mirrors. Only in the shared vulnerability of a neutral, deconstructed space can we begin to heal the wounds inflicted by our own living rooms. Your comfort is a luxury the oppressed cannot afford. It is time to let it go. The grammar of grievance, deconstructing semantic parasitism. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz once posited that we live in the best of all possible worlds, a theodicy so optimistic it drove Voltaire to satirical despair. Yet reading Dr.
Wynona's tract on the tyrannical oppression of holiday tchotchkes, one suspects we have instead stumbled into the most deranged of all possible solipsisms.
I want you to consider the sheer grinding mechanism of the intellect required to look at a glass sphere hanging from a fir tree, a bauble, and see not a festive tradition but a shrine to exclusion. This is not social analysis. It is the hallucinatory paralysis of a mind that has lost the ability to distinguish scale.
To the critical consciousness, as Wynona styles her Gnostic initiation, a decoration is not an object of beauty or a nod to the transcendent cycle of the seasons, but a combatant in a zero-sum war for equity.
When you lose the ability to differentiate between a wreath and a weapon, you have not become woke, you have simply lost the functional use of your categorical faculties. The tradition of the tree itself, stretching back to the pre-Christian Germanic reverence for life, persisting amid the death of winter, or its later Christianization as the paradise tree, was always an affirmation of continuity, of being itself. To reframe it as comfort colonialism, the theft of shared mental peace for individual nostalgia, is to project onto the homeowner a criminality that only exists in the accuser's own fevered imagination. It is Freudian projection at its most transparent. She accuses the man hanging the wreath of theft, while simultaneously demanding ownership of his interior consciousness and private space. This linguistic sorcery relies entirely on what we might call the etymological rape of violence. Trace the word back to the Latin violentia, which implies vehement force, or to its proper home in centuries of English common law, where it denotes unlawful physical harm, and you find a concept with teeth, a concept that requires actual victims and actual perpetrators. But in the hands of the semantic parasite, violence undergoes an inflationary crisis comparable to the Weimar Republic's currency. By expanding the meaning of violence to encompass decorative violence, the subjective sensation of feeling alienated by a Santa Claus figurine, the ideologue performs a trick of devastating epistemic sabotage. When violence includes the mere sight of a weight set or a festive centerpiece, the word loses all discriminative power. It renders actual violence, rape, battery, murder, unspeakable. Because the vocabulary of harm has been bankrupted by the trivial. This is the gamma bias loop in action. Female distress, or the distress of the designated victim class, is amplified to the level of a moral emergency. Feeling Schreiber harm equals moral emergency. While the disposability of men is rendered invisible, the syllogism is brutally simple. If my discomfort is violence, and violence demands sanction, then your refusal to accommodate my neurosis is a crime.
This is not the pursuit of justice, it is the totalitarianization of the ego. Now observe the breathtaking arrogance of the consent of the collective fallacy, perhaps the most insidious cancer in Wynona's manifesto.
She asserts that private spaces, your living room, your den, the sanctuary you built with your own labor, must now be subject to a veto by the nebulous collective. This is a fundamental category error, a collision with reality so severe it should shatter the text. The Western legal tradition, from the Roman concept of dominium to the English common law's protections of the home as a man's castle, has always distinguished between the res publica, public affairs, and the private sphere. The home is the fundamental unit of subsidiarity, the principle that authority should reside at the most local, competent level. To demand that your interior decor requires the consent of the collective is not progress. It is the definition of totalitarianism. It is a demand that the state, or the collective, which is usually just the state in a funny hat, colonize the last refuge of the individual. These are the same people who will tell you that my body, my choice, is an absolute moral imperative when it involves the termination of a fetus. Yet my living room, my choice, is an act of patriarchal aggression when it involves a throw pillow. The asymmetry is the point. They do not want equality, they want total jurisdiction over your being. Finally, we must confront the engine that drives this entire clown car off the cliff. Standpoint epistemology, or what I prefer to call the Gnostic heresy of the modern university.
Winona draws a line between the untrained eye, you, the ignorant plebe, and the critical consciousness, her, the initiate. This is not logic, it is a religious cult stripped of the transcendent.
She claims access to a secret knowledge, canalje, that is identity-gated. You cannot see the decorative violence because you are blinded by your privilege. This framework is self-sealing, immunity. If you agree with her, you are saved. If you disagree, your disagreement is merely proof of your infection by the patriarchy. It is a tautological prison. The concept of microaggression functions similarly, violating the ancient Western principle of mens rea, the guilty mind. In this new Kafkaesque jurisprudence, the intention of the perpetrator is irrelevant. Only the feeling of the victim constitutes evidence. If I feel aggressed by your face roller, you are an aggressor. This annihilates due process and replaces it with the tyranny of the most sensitive neurotic in the room. We are watching the death of the logos, the triumph of the pathos, and the elevation of the hysterical to the status of the divine. Having mapped the coordinates of her conceptual prison, we can now predict with mathematical precision exactly how she will process any given input, whether Christmas wreath or squat rack. The machinery does not discriminate, it converts all raw material into the same homogenized grievance. Watch how effortlessly she transforms the ancient discipline of physical cultivation into evidence of moral pathology, and understand that this is not error, but design. The home gym, stripped of context, severed from tradition, presented as atomized aggression, becomes the perfect exhibit for her prosecution, precisely because it represents everything her ideology must destroy: self-sufficiency, private order, and the masculine capacity to stand alone, the sanctuary under siege, natural law, private order, and the defense of excellence, GK. Chesterton once observed that the modern world is not evil because there are too many walls, but because there are too few doors. Thresholds have become trauma, and the locks on those doors are now hate crimes. Dr.
Winona feminist Marxist PhD. That name cascades off the tongue like a diagnosis, has provided us a forensic specimen of leftist pathology, so pristine it belongs in a glass case at the Natural History Museum.
Right beside the dodo and the passenger pigeon, her essay radiates every mark of ideological possession, and rest assured, she is possessed by a demon of singular tenacity, a spirit that cannot tolerate a single square inch of creation existing outside its jurisdiction. Her thesis that your holiday decorations constitute decorative violence and your home gym is a temple of toxic masculinity strips away the euphemisms to reveal the totalitarian heart beating beneath victim politics.
Winona is not complaining. She is issuing a declaration of war against private order itself, and those who dismiss her as a crank fail to recognize that cranks become commissars when granted institutional power.
She cannot sleep at night knowing that somewhere a man is doing a push-up without her permission. The gamma bias in her framing could not be more stark. Certes, women, and diverse others as permanent moral patients. Acknowledge her critical consciousness as the gated authority to declare your living room oppressive. Meaning every personal choice inflated into systemic violence. Feeling her alienation becomes your moral emergency. Duty, you must dismantle your sanctuary. Poa, she claims the unilateral right to redefine your property. Sanction the implied threat of social excommunication for non-compliance. Immunity, any objection merely proves your complicity. This recursive loop generates the entire structure of her argument, and once you see the machinery, the magic evaporates.
Let us begin where Winona begins, with the accusation that seasonal decor represents comfort, colonialism, and spatial dominance.
She cannot conceive of tradition as inheritance because inheritance implies a chain of obligation extending backward in time, and backward is the one direction progressivism forbids. The Christmas tree in your living room is not an act of aggression, but a node in a vast neural network connecting you to ancestors who preserved these rituals through famine, war, and pestilence. The patriarchal figure she identifies imposing his aesthetic is, in the classical understanding, the paterfamilias, not a tyrant, but a steward responsible for maintaining the household as a site of cultural transmission. In Rome, the paterfamilias held patria potestas, yes, but this authority was circumscribed by pietas, duty to gods, country, and family. The father who hauls a tree into his home and strings it with lights is performing an act of cultura, the cultivation of meaning in a meaningless age. He is teaching his children that the cycle of seasons carries symbolic weight, that light persists against darkness, that the family unit constitutes a mini-cosmos with its own liturgy.
Winona calls this exclusion. I call it the apprenticeship of excellence.
Children do not spring from the womb understanding symbolism. They learn it by watching their parents enact rituals, year after year, until the patterns become second nature. This is how civilization replicates itself, not through state edicts, but through the quiet, repetitive work of household formation. To demand that all traditions be stripped because someone somewhere might feel alienated is to demand the abolition of particularity itself, and particularity is the oxygen of identity.
Now consider the home gym, which Winona identifies as a temple of toxic masculinity, where performative strength takes precedence over the communal duty of care.
The irony here is blade sharp. The man who trains in his garage is literally preparing to discharge the communal duty of care more effectively. When the hurricane floods the neighborhood, when the car breaks down on a remote highway at midnight, when a neighbor needs furniture hauled up 3 flights of stairs, the man with calloused hands and a strong back does not philosophize about equity, he lifts. The 4 horsemen of men's rights advocacy ride through her analysis unrecognized. The empathy gap renders invisible the sacrifices men make. Gamma bias amplifies female discomfort while minimizing male exertion. Male disposability treats the male body as a tool to be used and discarded, and responsibility without authority demands that men serve without granting them the social recognition that service deserves.
Winona looks at a man doing deadlifts and sees aggression. I see a man preparing his body for the labor that civilization requires.
The ancient Greeks understood this. The gymnasium was not a vanity project, but a crucible of arete, excellence in body and spirit. Mens sana in corpora sana was not propaganda for the male gaze, but a recognition that physical discipline enables mental fortitude. The man who trains at home is not privatizing wellness. He is making himself into a more capable instrument of provision and protection. The weights in his garage do not threaten the safety and calm of the domestic sphere. They guarantee it. If the alternative to performative strength is a civilization of men too weak to change a tire or carry an injured child, then give me performance every time.
Winona's analysis of the face roller deserves special attention because it reveals the schizoid character of feminist ideology, simultaneously demanding female empowerment while denying that women possess agency over their
own choices. She claims the face roller constitutes submission to the demand that we remain aesthetically palatable. But this framing requires her to believe that women who engage in beauty rituals are helpless dupes of the patriarchy rather than rational actors pursuing their own preferences. This is the feminist paradox. Women are strong and independent until they make choices feminists dislike, at which point they become brainwashed victims of false consciousness. The medieval scholastics recognized pulchritudo, beauty, as one of the transcendentals, the universal properties of being that include truth, goodness, and beauty. These are not social constructs but deep structures of reality itself. The desire to appear attractive is not submission to oppression, but participation in an erotic order that predates ideology by several million years. David Buss's cross-cultural research on mate selection demonstrates that physical attractiveness functions as a reliable signal of health, fertility, and genetic fitness, not because patriarchy invented these standards, but because evolution hardwired them into human psychology.
When Winona rolls her face, she is not submitting to the male gaze. She is optimizing her presentation in a mating market that has operated since the first trilobite twitched in the Cambrian Sea.
To recast this as complicity with oppression is to pathologize the entire apparatus of sexual selection. Feminism has become the ideology that looks at a woman putting on lipstick and sees a crime scene.
But Winona's most insidious move comes in her final lines. Your comfort is a luxury the oppressed cannot afford. It is time to let it go.
Comfort, by which she means property, privacy, tradition, and the fruits of labor, has been transmuted into a moral failing. This is the grammar of totalitarianism laid bare. The totalitarian always begins by asserting that your private enjoyment comes at the expense of collective suffering. Your home is not yours, but a theft from those who have less. Your peace is violence by another name. This logic knows no termination point. If your living room constitutes aggression against the diverse reality of the modern world, then so does your bedroom, your bank account, your thoughts, your identity. There is no end to the demands because the grievance is manufactured to generate perpetual leverage.
Winona invokes shared vulnerability and neutral, deconstructed space as the alternative, but these are logical contradictions.
There is no neutral space. Every aesthetic choice reflects values, and the deconstructed room would simply reflect her values, the blank, sterile, surveilled conformity of the institutional ward. A neutral space would require the abolition of all particularity. No art, no symbols, no history, no personality. This is not freedom, but the architecture of the asylum.
What Winona cannot tolerate is the home as a fortress of ordered liberty, the Western tradition of the household as the primary unit of resistance against state encroachment.
Aristotle's oikonomia established the household as the foundation of political life. The English common law doctrine that an Englishman's home is his castle codified the inviolability of private space. The Fourth Amendment enshrined this principle in the American constitutional order. These are not patriarchal conspiracies, but hard-won protections against the overreach of concentrated power. The private dwelling is the last redoubt of individual authority, the space where the citizen exercises sovereignty without needing to justify his choices to the collective.
Winona's essay is not analysis. It is a reconnaissance mission. She is testing the walls, probing for weaknesses, demanding entry under the guise of moral emergency.
Her final demand that you let go of your comfort is the demand that you surrender the only territory where you remain sovereign. The Christian understanding of the household offers a template for resistance. The home is not a political battleground, but a domestic church, the primary site of formation in virtue, identity, and eternal meaning. The father's authority is service, not domination. He is the kaput of the household, responsible before God for the souls entrusted to his care. The mother's nurture is not oppression, but the irreplaceable ground of human development. Her work in the home creates the conditions for children to become capable of reason, love, and contribution.
The children's formation is a sacred duty, not an exercise in ideological reprogramming. Winona's program dissolves this order entirely.
If the home is merely a political battleground, then parents have no right to transmit their values. If the child's consent must be obtained for every aesthetic choice, then parental authority evaporates. If the collective has standing to declare your traditions oppressive, then the family ceases to exist as an independent unit. This is not reform, but annihilation. Schopenhauer recognized the underlying dynamic with surgical precision, the feminine claim to moral authority without corresponding accountability.
Winona demands the power to declare your home oppressive, your body threatening, your rituals exclusionary, while accepting no responsibility for the chaos her demands would unleash.
If every household must accommodate every potential grievance, no household can function. If every tradition must pass the test of universal inclusion, no tradition can survive. If every personal choice must be submitted to collective approval, personality itself becomes a crime. This is not justice, it is the eternal feminine manipulate toward power masked as victimhood. The woman who claims oppression while holding a doctoral degree, a byline, and the institutional backing of academia is not speaking truth to power. She is power, and she wants more.
The statistics Winona ignores reveal the true landscape of suffering. Men account for approximately 80% of all suicides in the United States, a disparity that persists across every age group and demographic.
Family courts award primary custody to mothers in roughly 80% of contested cases, while fathers who fall behind on child support face jail time despite the empirical reality that most payment failures stem from unemployment or underemployment rather than willful refusal. Men constitute over 90% of workplace fatalities, working the dangerous jobs that keep civilization running while academics theorize about performative strength.
The male disposability that Winona's analysis exemplifies is not a bug, but a feature of the gynocentric order, a system that extracts labor, sacrifice, and risk from men while denying them moral recognition.
The man training in his garage gym is not centering patriarchal values. He is preparing himself for a world that will use him up and discard him without ceremony.
Let me be unequivocal. Winona's essay is not a critique of aesthetics. It is an assault on the preconditions of human flourishing.
The private home, the inherited tradition, the disciplined body, these are not luxuries, but the essential infrastructure of a free society. Dismantle them, and what remains? The atomized individual, stripped of identity, trembling before the collective, dependent on institutional benevolence for every need. This is the leftist endgame, not equality but dependency, not liberation but managed servitude. Resist it while you still have walls to defend. You have just witnessed the ideological machine stripped to its gears. Dr.
Winona's article is not an isolated absurdity. It is the logical endpoint of a philosophical contagion that has been metastasizing for centuries.
When you sever truth from reality, when you declare that words mean whatever emotional agitprop requires them to mean, you do not liberate the oppressed. You manufacture an infinite supply of victims and an infinite demand for tyrants. The woman who claims a wreath constitutes violence has already demonstrated she will call anything violence if it grants her power over your home, your traditions, your body, your mind. This is not a slippery slope. It is a precipice, and we have already stepped off it. Consider the scoreboard. Family courts strip fathers of children at rates that would make a Soviet commissar blush. Over 80% of custody awards go to mothers, while suicide rates among divorced men dwarf every other demographic. False paternity claims hover between 3 and 10% depending on the study, meaning hundreds of thousands of men are raising children who are not theirs. Cuckolded by a culture that celebrates female sexual agency while denying male reproductive autonomy, women initiate nearly 70% of divorces, often citing dissatisfaction rather than any objective wrongdoing, and walk away with half the assets plus monthly extortion payments. And yet, we are the ones lectured about deconstruction and complicity by women whose greatest oppression is seeing a dumbbell in a living room. The home gym is not toxic masculinity. It is the last refuge of men who understand that competence is the only currency that cannot be debased by fiat. The Greeks knew this. Irete demands a body capable of enacting the will of the soul. The man who trains in his garage at 5 in the morning before his children wake is not performing dominance. He is preparing to carry them if the house catches fire.
Winona sees oppression because she cannot conceive of sacrifice. Her imagination extends exactly as far as her own grievances and no further.
The face roller she condemns as submission to the male gaze is, in reality, women's autonomous participation in beauty, a transcendental value that every healthy civilization has celebrated. But to the ideologue, female agency only counts when it produces grievance. Choice is only valid when it produces complaint.
Here is the secret that Schopenhauer understood, and that Winona inadvertently reveals. The feminine claim to moral authority operates through the manipulation of feeling rather than the persuasion of reason.
She does not argue, she emotes. She does not prove, she accuses. Her epistemology is entirely self-referential. If she feels alienated, the wreath is violent. If she feels threatened, the gym is oppressive. If she feels judged, the mirror is complicit. There is no standard external to her own neurosis. This is not philosophy. It is the tantrum of a toddler weaponized through academic jargon, and we have built an entire civilization around taking it seriously. The neutral, deconstructed space she demands is a lie. There is no neutrality. Every room expresses values. Every tradition carries meaning. Every choice excludes alternatives. The question is not whether hierarchy exists, but which hierarchy you will serve. The wreath on the door represents a civilization that endured for millennia. Imperfect, yes, but capable of producing men who would die for their families and women who would raise children in security.
The blank wall Winona proposes represents nothing except the negation of meaning itself. It is the aesthetic of the institution, the waiting room, the prison cell. Choose accordingly.
You have read this far because you sense the truth. The spell is breaking. You now see the machinery behind the curtain, the semantic inflation that turns discomfort into violence, the standpoint epistemology that grants unassailable authority to anyone claiming victim status, the gamma bias that amplifies female distress while erasing male suffering, the recursive loop of grievance generation that manufactures new oppressions faster than any reality could possibly supply them. You cannot unsee it. And that is the first step toward freedom. The path forward is not complaint, it is construction. Build your home as a fortress of ordered liberty. Train your body as an instrument of service.
Transmit your traditions without apology. When the Winonas of the world accuse you of violence for hanging a wreath, smile and remember, their words have been drained of meaning by their own inflation.
They do not speak truth, they emit noise. You are not obligated to accept their framing, adopt their language, or submit to their demands. Your home is yours, your traditions are yours, your life is yours, walk accordingly. And now the sponsored book introduction, Walking on Water, Clear, Ordered Thinking. The modern world has descended into a profound chaos that threatens the very foundations of Western civilization. We witness daily the systematic dismantling of structures that have sustained human progress for millennia, orchestrated by a genocentric ideology that has infected our institutions like a cancer. This feminist pathology, masquerading as enlightenment while functioning as a vast conspiracy of genocentric silence, has transformed countless individuals into NPC zombies who mindlessly repeat ideological mantras without understanding their origins or consequences. These victims of cultural Marxism exhibit a cult-like uniformity of thought, responding to reason not with counter-arguments but with narcissistic rage and irresponsible violence. Men, once the architects of society and guardians of order, now find themselves demonized, pathologized, and systematically excluded from positions of influence and authority. The result is a world that increasingly lacks direction, purpose, and the clarity of thought necessary to sustain complex societies. I have spent decades observing this unraveling of social order with increasing alarm. As a student of philosophy, biology, and history, I recognized early on that what we were witnessing was not an evolution toward a better society, but a devolution into primitive thinking, masked as enlightenment. My personal trajectory began in academia, where I watched once proud institutions become indoctrination centers for ideological dogma, immune to reason or evidence. I recall a specific incident at a prestigious university where a tenured professor was driven from his position for daring to present empirical research on biological sex differences, research that had been accepted. Scientific consensus for decades, but suddenly became heretical. The irony was lost on his persecutors that their response to his scientific findings was to behave exactly like the religious fundamentalists they claimed to oppose. I left that environment to build businesses and raise a family, only to discover the same corrosive ideas infiltrating every aspect of civil society. In my own company, I implemented meritocratic hiring practices only to be threatened with lawsuits and public shaming campaigns by activist groups demanding gender quotas regardless of competence. Through years of research, practical application, and hard-won experience, I have developed a framework for understanding this transformation and more importantly, for reversing it through the application of clear, ordered thinking. This book represents the culmination of that work, a systematic deconstruction of the false narratives that have led us to this precipice, and a reconstruction of the foundational truths upon which successful civilizations are built, drawing from the rich intellectual tradition of Western thought, from the logic of Aristotle to the governance structures of Rome, from the synthesis of faith and reason in the medieval period to the Enlightenment's focus on individual liberty, and grounded in the linear history and ethical frameworks of Judeo-Christian theology that recognize universal human dignity within a hierarchical order designed by the Creator. We will establish an unassailable framework for understanding the world as it actually exists, not as we might wish it to be. The methodology employed is rigorously logical, employing syllogistic reasoning to demonstrate why progressive ideologies collapse under their own weight, while traditional masculine values remain not only defensible, but essential for human flourishing. Rejecting emotional appeals that substitute for reasoned argument, as Stéphane Molyneux has consistently demonstrated in his dismantling of collectivist ideologies. Within these pages, you will find comprehensive analyses of the biological, psychological, and sociological realities that underpin gender differences and their implications for social organization. We will examine the biology of burden to understand why men have historically borne the heaviest responsibilities in society, and why this arrangement is not a conspiracy, but a natural order beneficial to all, rooted in our evolutionary psychology, as Steven Pinker has documented. In the genocentrism of the state, we will document how modern governance structures have increasingly prioritized female interests at the expense of social cohesion and long-term stability. Contrary to the moral foundations that have sustained civilization, the logic of the left will expose the internal contradictions of progressive ideology and demonstrate why it inevitably leads to the very outcomes it claims to oppose. Through the analysis Jonathan Haidt has pioneered regarding differing moral frameworks, we will explore the mathematics of mating to reveal the immutable truths about sexual selection that no amount of social engineering can alter. Through it all, we will maintain a commitment to empirical evidence and logical consistency. This book is written explicitly for men who have begun to question the narratives they have been fed their entire lives. Men who recognize something is profoundly wrong with modern society but lack the intellectual framework to articulate exactly what or why. It is for those who value truth over comfort, who prioritize competence over credentials, and who understand that reclaiming masculine authority is not about oppressing others, but about fulfilling one's natural responsibilities as providers, protectors, and leaders, as Andrew Tate has articulated in his calls for men to embrace their masculine nature and reject societal attempts to domesticate them. If you are a man who has swallowed the red pill and seeks to understand its implications fully, this book will provide the intellectual foundation you need. However, if you are committed to maintaining your ideological possession, if you prefer comfortable lies to uncomfortable truths, if you believe that all distinctions are merely social constructs with no biological basis, or if you are easily offended by challenges to your worldview, put this book down immediately. It is not for you, and nothing contained within will penetrate your defenses. Go instead and find another distraction to occupy your time. For those who remain, understand that what follows is not merely an intellectual exercise, but a call to action. The restoration of order begins with clarity of thought, but it cannot end there. Once you see the world as it truly is, once you understand the forces arrayed against masculine virtue, you will have no choice but to act accordingly. The fate of Western civilization hangs in the balance, and it will be men of clear thinking and decisive action who determine its future. This book provides the conceptual toolkit you need to join that fight. Read it carefully, reflect on its arguments, test its claims against your own experience and observation, and then resolve to become the man you were meant to be, the man who walks on water through clear, ordered thinking. Walking on Water, Clear, Ordered Thinking. Written by Conrad Riker. Buy now. Links in description.